Hello, everybody. I'm Rebecca Gwanson with KCIT, and I'm here for our volunteer spotlight. Today, I have the distinct pleasure to be speaking with the woman, the myth, the legend, Angela Keene.
You only get to say that because we know each other for so long.
So long. It's so good. Let's jump right in. Angela, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, thanks. It's really cool to do this and to be here because I love KCIT and I've been doing the work for a long time. Outside of KCIT, my work has mostly been with domestic violence and sexual assault victims and survivors. I started volunteering with the local sexual assault program here in Lancaster when I was in college, and that just kind of opened the door for me. I was doing a lot of hotline and medical advocacy as a volunteer. And then when I finished college, I took a part-time position in a local police department, working with domestic violence victims and helping to connect them to community resources and helping them to navigate the criminal justice system, because God knows we know that's not easy. And I that's just it was all very natural, and that's the work that I've done. So I've been really fortunate to have positions that have landed me in both community-based organizations like sexual assault programs, domestic violence programs, and also systems-based programs like the police department, the district attorney's office. And I have worked for PCCD. I was a consultant doing training and networking for all victim service providers. So the folks who are working in the DA's offices, the community-based programs. When I took that position in 2005, I was one of 3 people doing that work. And so I got the Western region, and that's how I met you. And all of the Western region folks who are going to see this, and just loved it. I really enjoy bringing people together and helping them make connections and problem solving together and just connecting. Like, I just think the support and the community aspect of what we do is really important, and it helps to sustain us, especially when we're working with people who have trauma histories and are in crisis a lot of the time. I think that community aspect for workers and the people who are trying to help is really, really important. So I also started doing more trainings, and all of that was just, a great experience. Got to meet really great people. And then I spent a couple of years at PCIT, which is the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and got to do more work in communities. So I did some technical assistance with communities who were evaluating their PFA processes. We did more work there. And like, I feel so fortunate because I really have had a lot of different opportunities and have done different parts of this work of victim services, human services. And it's all been helpful and different. And I feel like each position comes and it's at the right time for me. After PCDD, I went to Gettysburg, and I was the supervisor of the domestic violence and sexual assault program there. And I continued to learn more about myself there because it was a different position and different type of work. Working in residential is really different than the other types of services I had been doing and providing. And so, yeah, it was hard. That was probably the place where I learned the most, on all levels, about myself, about people, about supervising staff, about the work. And I actually think I might have burned out a little bit. I left that job and took a break from victim services for about 6 months. And then when I came back, I went into restorative justice work,
Mhm.
and that felt really healing and really, I mean, I had been doing that through the Victim Offender Dialogue program, um, at the state level, but in Lancaster, we actually have a local community-based program that does restorative justice work. Um, and so I was a case manager there, and again, I continued to work with, volunteers and staff in the community, um, and running circles and facilitating dialogue, and it just felt really good, felt like really healing work, which sometimes in victim services, we don't always feel that way. So, yeah, I just restorative justice work, I think, is really important, and I think it's something that we don't talk a whole lot about in this world, so hopefully people will be more intrigued to know more about that.
Mhm. I hope
Um,
I hope some
yeah.
Googling is happening. Restorative justice, transformational justice. Yeah,
And
it's
now
so
I'm back
important.
in a domestic violence program, but I'm doing, I say everything but client work. So I'm doing outreach and volunteer coordination and intern mentoring and, like all of those sorts of things. I'm still doing reporting,
Mhm.
but but I'm not interacting with clients as I used to. And that feels good because I do really love the community work, um, and just being out there and bridging connections and educating people.
It's amazing. It's amazing to
Thanks.
know you through your journey too, and to be
Yes, you have.
directly, personally, and professionally impacted by your evolution and trainings and the way that you've brought yourself to this work. It's just, personally has been
Thank
amazing
you.
to be affected by and impacted by. Um, what brought you to KCIT?
So when I took the training and networking position when I was first met you, um, KKIT was part of like the KKIT did the foundational training. I'm not sure what they call it today anymore, but like the training that all of the new advocates go through. I think mostly like the systems based advocates are going through that. I don't know if all of the community based advocates do or not because we have our own funders who are telling us to do training. But KKIT was doing that training and the crisis and trauma piece. And I was really interested in it. And so I went through the training in 2005. It was 5 days then. And so I'd already been doing, the domestic violence and sexual assault work for about 7 years. Um, and that training just like really blew it out of the water for me. I was like, oh my God. Like I started to understand the why behind the things the crisis response that we were doing and the conversations that we had. Like my classic example is like the roller coaster of emotions. Like I had a deeper understanding of why I was talking to, people at the hospital about that when I was on a medical call.
Mhm.
Like these are some of the things that you might experience. And now I could talk to them more about the why and help to normalize that for them that this is really part of the human response to an overwhelming crisis traumatic situation. Um, and that's what that week-long training did for me. It gave me a greater foundation, a greater understanding, a greater connection to the work, really.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I signed up right away. Like there was no doubt that that I wasn't going to volunteer.
Mhm.
And I actually then got on the trainer track
Mhm.
and started. I went through um, the national Nova training and then the onboarding process and got to work with Mary Jo Harwood. She was my trainer mentor
Mm.
for my first training in 2007. And I'm still connected to her today. For what is it? Is the math 14 or 15 years later?
Mhm.
Talk about like things coming back full circle. The agency that I'm working at now is going through this process of being more trauma informed, like really infusing it into practices, our policies, our
Mhm.
procedures, all of that. And Mary Jo is our mentor through that agency, through that
Of course,
process.
of course.
I mean, this is, and that's another thing like about this field. Like I
Mhm.
just feel like you and I have been friends now for
Mhm.
I don't know, 15 years at least, let's just say.
Yeah, yeah.
Like just the people I've met and the relationships that I've made and built, and it's just everything comes full circle. And it's just been really amazing. I have felt really supported, and just myself with all of these folks who are doing this work too.
Mhm. I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
Um,
so I've just been, volunteering, responding, and training since then.
it's amazing. When you think about that, the volunteering and training for these years, are there any moments that stand out in your mind in that work that you would like to share today?
Oh, there's lots. I mean, so, like from the training aspect, I have gotten to work with some really cool people. I'm still connected with Jim.
Mhm.
Obviously Mary Jo has come back. I think in the training aspect, it's really it's a really a privilege to work with people who are learning, um, and who are really trying their best to like commit to this practice and this way of doing things. Even if they don't join the team,
Mhm.
I feel more confident that we are a more informed and better trained field across the board. I think that people walk away with something.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just I love training and like challenging people to think and really integrate the information. And
Mhm.
it's a lot. It's changed. We've I mean, I think I've watched it evolve from 5 days to 3.5 days to virtual. Like
Mhm.
Leslie and I have been doing a lot of work in this last year trying to help it make it with Melissa, make it more virtual. And um yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to watch the evolution.
Mhm.
And when it comes to responding, like there's evolution there too. And I really appreciate that about KCIT, that we continue, like we're not so stuck in a model that we can't look at ways to figure out how to make it work in different situations.
Absolutely.
Um, and I think that that's really important. We have to evolve.
Mhm.
Right? Like,
Mhm.
if there's one thing that we learned through the pandemic is that you have to evolve,
Mhm.
right? Because old ways aren't always the right way anymore.
Right.
Um, but we haven't, I don't think that we've lost sight of like our central focus of why we respond and the service that we provide. And the honor it is to hold that space for people. We're just holding space in different ways.
Yes.
Some of the things that stand out, like when I was working at PCADV, there were we were doing a lot of work with KKIT. There was a partnership that was developing there to better respond to domestic violence incidences, especially with program staff. Um, and I got to be a part of some of those responses and also figure out that the basic response that we teach in our basic training wasn't enough, right? Like you worked in a domestic violence program. We had to shift. We had to pivot and use one of the more advanced response protocols, um, because we were dealing with program staff who had their own trauma histories, who were doing this work and in trauma every day. And so the basic protocol wasn't enough. And because, I think, because we had strong leadership at KKIT, people like me and others who had the experience to say, this isn't working.
Mhm.
What else can we do? Um, like putting those pieces together and then trying it out and seeing what worked.
Mhm.
Um, I think that that was really important. There's some responses that I can think about that, you know, just being flexible. So because I'm a trainer, like sometimes I get asked to to go to certain responses because I want to include a training aspect.
Mhm.
Um, there's one that I did, and somehow through the conversation, like I started with doing a little bit of education about the process, and we figured out that there was somebody in that group who actually should have been having their own one-on-one. And so we
Mhm.
did that when we broke out for the actual GCI. We were able, me and one of the other team members, we pulled that person aside and had a one-on-one with that person, a two-on-one. But you know had we not been doing that and not really been thinking about each response
Mhm.
as what do they need, what's the need here, and that speaks to the evaluation, right? The All of that stuff that happens on the front end, that I think people in training are kind of like, why do we have to know all of this? Well, this is an example. Like, we
Mhm.
have to be well prepared walking into it, because then there's always a surprise anyway, right?
Right.
And
So true.
um and then there's stories, like the one Pam shared. Like, we're driving to Philly. I use this in training. Um, so I can share it here. But Pam and I, we were going to Philadelphia for a response, and I was driving. She's the team leader. I'm the team manager. Um, I'll circle back to that, why that's important in a minute. But the Schuylkill Expressway and traffic, I mean, this is like between 3 and 5. So the traffic speeds up and slows down. And I could see it coming. We were speeding up, but slowing down in front of me. So I'm slowing down, but the people behind me are not. And there's somebody about 10 cars back who doesn't. And I use this story because it's a classic example of two people experiencing an event in very different ways. The It's like a chain reaction, right? Like, literally, I watched 10 cars back, and they hit the car in front of them and in front of them and so forth, until it gets to me. And when it gets to me, it's just this little tap. It's really nothing significant. And I'm watching it happen, but it happened and we're stopped. And I just froze. And I just froze. And then Pam's in the passenger seat, and she's like, Are you going to do something? Like, and I'm just like, What do you want me to do? I didn't know what to do. And
Yeah.
she's like, Get out of the car and go look at your bumper and talk to the guy behind. Like, she's walking me through this, and I don't have, like, I don't know. I didn't realize maybe that I had trauma history from car accidents,
Mm.
but it was just really funny because she's just like in total command. She's still up here in her thinking part of her brain, and I'm just checked out.
Mhm.
Um,
That's such a great example of, being in the same situation and everyone internalizing it and experiencing it different.
yeah, it's also maybe the team leader and team manager shouldn't travel together. um, but Pam is so much fun that I couldn't
What are
resist.
you going to do? True. Angela, if you had to distill it down to the questions of um, why KCIT, why take a training, why become trauma informed, how would you distill that down? What would you say?
I think I think that KKIT offers something that there's a gap in the field. Like, we're really it's another resource, and it's another tool, especially when we talk about victim services, because there's that human element to crime, right? And that's what KKIT focuses on. That's our wheelhouse. Um, and the training is extensive. I mean, the training is really um everybody who I've talked to has walked away with something. And I think it supports whatever work you're going to do with people. I mean, we really drill it down to this is a human response.
Yes.
So, in whatever capacity you're working with other human beings, because we all are, this information is going to be helpful and will hopefully make your job a little easier. Um, and so, I think like the training itself, is just really valuable information. And I know that there's a lot out there now with everybody being in the trauma informed party, which is great.
Mhm.
The other thing that I think that is really unique is that KCIT offers something that others aren't offering as far as services go, with the group setting, with the individual setting. I've done as much, individual companioning as I have facilitating the groups. Um, and both are really important. And the fact that we can do that and that we can offer that service, it is, I've been doing the victim service work for a long time, but this is just a little different. And I think it makes me better in my full time jobs. It's such an honor to hold that space for somebody. Um, and I think that's one of the things that I've just really grown to learn over the years as well. And I hope that others are seeing that when they're using the information and the skills that we're trying to teach during training. Um, and it's not a big time commitment. Like there's a lot of flexibility.
Mhm.
You can say yes or no.
Right.
Um, and and you're encouraged to. Like if you're
Mhm.
not in a good place, don't come.
Yeah. Oh
Because
yeah.
we need, we're walking with people in pain in other ways. So if you've got your own stuff going on, it's just going to make it harder.
Mhm.
Um, and the people are great. I have made some lifelong friends through KCIT.
Mhm.
And I think that is really important as we're doing this work too.
Yeah. Beautifully stated. Um, so in closing, do you have a fun fact that you would like to share with us?
Um, well, there's one that always kind of seems to make people laugh. So, like I said, when I left that position in Adams County and I kind of burned out, crashed and burned, I did. Let's just be real, I did. Um, I spent So I left there in August and I spent the next 4 or 5 months working at the local liquor store. um,
Fun fact.
if you've ever been to a wine and spirit shop in Pennsylvania, they hang posters all the time. It was the season, right? They were
Mhm.
coming up on the holiday season, and so they hire extra folks. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds like it might be kind of fun. Like it's something totally unrelated,
Mhm.
not any kind of victim service work. Um, and so that's what I did. And it was different and it was fun and it was the break that I needed
Mhm.
because I came back and I was ready again to do the work. And you know, there's
I love
probably
that. I
other
think
crazy things.
it's such a great example of radical self-care, of knowing the
Yes.
self and having the courage to make the shift when we need to make it, to have that respite, to have that pause, to be able to return in a different way.
And we have to be our own advocates and be able
Mhm.
to just say enough is enough.
Right?
I wish I had done it sooner in
Mhm.
some regards because some things might be different. And at the same time, like I believe I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And all of that is part of who I am, the mistakes, the learning opportunities, the support, the all of it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with me today and spending this time with me. Have a great
Um,
day, Angela.
Thanks, Rebecca.